Of all of Australia's dangerous snakes, perhaps the most terrifying to encounter is the striking-looking red-bellied black snake. Endemic to the East Coast, the large glossy black snake with a red belly is the one you are most likely to encounter in your own backyard.
The red-bellied black snake is probably the venomous snake that people are most likely to see in the parts of Australia where most of the people live, and that's along the eastern coast of Australia. And they're a spectacular snake, up to 1.5 meters, even 2 meters long, jet black above, bright red on the sides and sort of pinkish on the belly. And unlike many of the Australian snakes, they move around by day, and they are perfectly happy to settle in to the suburbs, so that even where there are plenty of people around, there's this bright, spectacular creature wandering around during the daytime in the places where people go.
With a diet consisting primarily of frogs, other reptiles, and small mammals, the red-bellied black snake is also perfectly happy to take to the water in search of their next feed.
They do spend a lot of time hunting underwater, and they will hunt, predate on fish and eels a lot of the time. And they can actually spend a lot of time under that water doing their hunting. Well, there's one instance I have known of where I know people down at Shoalhaven once. Down at Shoalhaven they were fishing, and as they were fishing they pulled the fish in, and this black snake came out of the water chasing this fish out on their line, up on the sand.
The red-bellied black snake is a species of elapid snake native to eastern Australia. Though its venom is capable of making you very sick, a bite from it is not generally fatal, and it is less venomous than other deadly Australian snakes. It is common in woodlands, forests, and swamplands, and is one of Australia's best-known snakes. So you'd think these fearsome predators would pose a huge threat to people going about their normal lives.
Fortunately, for an animal that is so common and so frequently encountered, the red-bellied black snake is less dangerous to humans than really any of the other big venomous snakes. So it is poisonous, and certainly it can cause substantial illness, and it might even be fatal to a child. But as far as I know, there are no recorded cases of fatalities of adults from red-bellied black snakes, and many people are bitten.
But while a lot of people are bitten, incredibly, many don't report nasty symptoms. Luckily, they have received a dry bite. John Can, an experienced snake handler from Sydney, has been bitten 6 times by snakes, but only once by a red-bellied black snake.
My dad was in snakes from the time he was 12-year-old. He was involved with snakes, or before then, and even his grandparents who reared him, you know. The red-bellied black snake bit me. Started to get quite off about it all. Strawn Sutherland was telling me to get to hospital, and I did. And they put me into Prince Henry, and the next morning, never give me antivenom. I was okay. The doctor said, "How you are?" I said, "I want out of here. I'm perfect." So they sent me home, and I got home, and I got very ill. Felt quite crooked.
John spent 8 days in hospital. The bite seemed harmless at the time, but like so many snake bites, the real damage comes many hours later.
More or less you just wipe it off. It's an embarrassment to get bitten by a snake. I don't think anyone in the world who has been bitten by a snake never said the same thing, "He got me." Anyone who gets bitten by a snake a second time would be a pretty rare occurrence if they was just an average person.
The red-bellied black snakes are not always in a nasty mood.
There are a lot of dry bites. The snake can decide not to inject venom, and red-bellies seem to choose that option pretty often. So it's a terrifying sight. There's this black and red thing that flattens out and hisses at you, but the reality is that if you give it half a chance, it'll zip away into the rushes, and that'll be the end of the encounter.
And fortunately for many people who have been bitten by red bellies and other deadly snakes, they've had the good fortune to have only suffered dry bites.
Any of the venomous snakes potentially can decide how much venom they want to inject when they bite. And so, for example, if they bite a rat, they might put in more venom than they do if they bite a mouse. And they can do exactly the same thing with a defensive strike.
And some people discover, to their good fortune, they haven't been bitten at all.
It actually turns out that the strike is not quite as it appears. We did some high-speed filming of brown snake strikes and showed that quite frequently the snake didn't even open its mouth. We had a glove just stuffed with straw that we'd push towards an aroused eastern brown snake. It would strike at it. You would think it had bitten the hand, but in fact, many cases it didn't even bother to open its mouth when it did it. So there are a lot of strikes like that are really just bluff. But unfortunately, of course, some of those strikes are not bluff, and that's when the problems come in.
So if you're lucky, that frightening encounter with the red-bellied blacksnake might just leave you with a case of badly jangled nerves.
The good thing about the red-bellied blacksnake, the main thing I want to say about them is that they're probably the gentlemen of the snake world in the fact that they're not an aggressive snake for no reason. No snake attacks for no reason. They're all defensive animals. They're not aggressive animals. So a red-bellied blacksnake's probably the most least even in defence. It'll probably put on a bit of a bluff, bit of defence when it's cornered, but generally they'll usually only bite once restrained.
Although both Andrew and Rick believe that the red-bellied blacksnake is not as dangerous as people think, John Can has a different view.
Well, around Sydney there's quite a few deadly snakes. You could call a black snake deadly because although all the records say they've never killed anyone, I got records where they have, and why not? I had 8 days in hospital from what they say a lousy red-bellied black snake.